So, welcome to the Rise of the Super Being podcast. I'm Vanderson Pires, and today I have a very special guest. As always, I have Aaron Luckman. What a cool name, man! Aaron Luckman.
Luckman, yep.
Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Aaron's a tattoo artist, has been traveling around the world, and he's practice Brazilian Jiu-jitsu, he practice MMA, Muay Thai, lift weights. It's that type of guy when you see, for the ones that are listening, I'm gonna describe Aaron. He's covered in tattoos, his neck, his face, his head. So it's that type of guy when if you see him and don't speak one word, you kind of, man, I'm scared of this guy. But as soon as you start talking to him, it's one of the nicest guys I ever met. Very sweetheart, it's really good soul, and very talented tattoo artist as well. So Aaron, how did you start this journey, man, as a tattoo artist?
I started when I was about 24 years old. 24, I think. I was living in Melbourne, Australia at the time. And it was something I was always interested in. I saw a lot of people around my community with tattoos, old fishermen. My mother has tattoos.
Oh man, your mother has tattoos?
Yeah, I've
That's
tattooed her a
awesome.
number of times as well.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think it was something in New Zealand at the time that was kind of becoming a lot more, I guess, popular with the general masses, and Maori tattooing at the time as well was kind of going through its renaissance period. So I was always really interested in it, but where I grew up is pretty remote,
Mm.
and the only sort of career opportunities around where I grew up were fishing, farming, and forestry, and this kind of primary industry work.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think too much of it, and I sort of started working in trades and then moved to a city. And then at the age of about 19, I decided to leave New Zealand and move to Australia. And that's where I got my first tattoo. And that first encounter kind of got me really interested in it. And I also had friends that were tattoo artists as well. And it was like this kind of seemed like this really mystical kind of world that existed on the fringes, and it grabbed my interest in a big way. Also, I've been kind of an artistically inclined person as
Mm-hmm.
well, but I've sort of come from a really blue collar family, and dad's always like, learn a trade, get a job, work with your hands, that's how you get by in life. So it was never really encouraged to sort of take that as a career path, something artistic as a career path. Um, and then what happened? Before I left New Zealand, I was working in a factory, and I made some friends. They were from Argentina. They were my co-workers. They were in New Zealand on like a working holiday visa kind of scheme. And they sort of encouraged me to come to Argentina to visit. I then, moved to Aussie, made some money because the money was much better in what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
the work that I was doing then. Um, and saved up and just basically showed up in South America and was like, hey, I'm here. And before I left, they were in Cordoba and I was in Buenos Aires to begin with. And while I was there, I was like, I'm going to get a sleeve. I just decided I'm going to get a sleeve.
Mm.
And
How old? How old?
I would have been maybe about 21.
21.
Yeah, 21. About, yeah. Um, and went to this, like, there's this arcade. I can't remember which street. Avenida Santa Fe, I think, in Buenos Aires. And there's all these tattoo shops all in a row down this one arcade. And I picked this one. I don't know why I picked it, but I did. Um, and just went in there and was like, hey, I want a sleeve. And then sort of the next day I was in there and just drew it all on and sort of went for it, and then traveled around and went back to Buenos Aires, and sort of got talking to the guy a lot about it. while I was in there. I probably seemed, like pretty naive at the time. I get loads of people asking me, and I'm just like, oh, a series of questions again
Yeah, yeah.
about wanting to get into it. And so I was probably that person at that time, annoying him for information, and but made a very clear conscious decision at that time that this is what I want to do. I don't want to work in trade anymore. I don't want to work doing hard labor for the rest of my life. I don't enjoy it. It makes my existence
Uh-huh.
very drab. So I pursued it. I really pursued it. And yeah, here I am now with it sort of 10 years on, and it's a good career. It affords me a lot of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So I've traveled a lot doing it. It affords me a lot of time to be creative, which I think people don't really get to experience much in many lines of work,
Mm-hmm.
or expression. They don't get to express themselves too much. Yeah, and it's allowed me to travel a lot as well, which has been great because I pushed really hard to try and be good or the best that I can be in it. So
That's awesome. So, Eric, did you mention you born in a place, in a remote place in New Zealand? Which place is that?
it's called Pukehina, and it's in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. So it's probably about an hour's drive southwards of Tauranga.
I never heard of this place.
It's tiny, yeah.
How many people do you reckon?
I think it's less now, but when I was living there, maybe a couple of thousand at the most. I think my school that I went to there was 80 students, and that was from J1 to Form 2, which is entrance to intermediate level school. So it's pretty small, just a little rural community school.
Yeah.
And then sort of bounced in between my father and mother's places a lot growing up for lack of getting on with one or the other. And yeah, shifting. So moving to Tauranga and then moving back and forth and back and forth. So
That's awesome. So, Eric, yeah, what I said about, normally, I think this is such a cliche as well because, man, now so many people has tattoos, and especially in New Zealand. In New Zealand, so it's a pretty common thing to see, people with tattoo and all sorts of people. You see woman, man, all sorts. But my first tattoo, I mentioned to you, my first tattoo I did when I was 13 years old. And back then just two types of people would have tattoos. If you're in a band or if you came out of jail. So I was the youngest guy, playing guitar and, have long hair. And that was the most rebel thing I could ever done, was having a tattoo in that age. And I even told you, the machine was, was all handmade.
the jail machine.
Yeah,
Jail
exactly.
style,
Yeah.
tape machine motors and these.
Yeah. And man, we did it in a bar, in a bar. And it was the first time I had a beer as well. So I had 2 glasses of beer just to numb a little bit the pain. And yeah, that got me sick as well. So that was a really interesting experience. But so how did you start, man? So how did you practice? Because even back then, I remember talking to this guy who was doing my first tattoo, and he said he started by I don't know if that's real, but he said to me he bought some pig skin, and he was practicing on that. Is that a thing?
Some people do. I practiced on my friends and family, unfortunately for them. So I had to go back in time and fix up or cover up a whole lot of crappy tattoos that I've done on them. Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's no substitute for living, breathing skin. You can't. It's warm. It's stretchy. It's not cold and dead, and it's of a different density, I think, to probably pig skin. So. Yeah, I did it that way. It was kind of hard. It was really hard at that time to get into because it was before the age of social media, and internet shopping was still like a really new thing. And people were still very wary of it at the time, I think. So you had to kind of like acquire supplies by finding someone that sold them first and then getting them to sell them to you. Because I started tattooing in my house. I didn't do any like kind of uh, formal or informal learning from another tattoo artist. I just kind of started at home, made tons of mistakes, set up everything wrong, butchered a whole lot of my mates, and eventually started, you figure something out and grab onto that and then elaborate on that and go and get tattooed and steal bits of information and watch what they're doing while they're doing it to kind of grow on that. And then eventually I sort of managed to like have a lot of good friends that worked in the industry help give me a lot of help. So that sort of pushed me along a lot further. And then my grandfather died, or was dying, and I came back to New Zealand to be with him. And I planned to be here for a long period of time so I could sort of see him out. And he died the day after I got here. And I was like, oh, well, I need to kind of stay home now and look after my grandmother. And I might as well make use of this time while I'm here. So I went and saw an old friend of mine that was he was a good tattoo artist, or still is a good tattoo artist, and he had his own shop. And I was just like, hey man, can I kind of come and, I've been tattooing from home, but can I please sort of come and work here and learn some things? And he sort of took me under his wing a bit. And yeah, that was my first experience working in a tattoo shop, which was, yeah, it was good. It was a different environment to be in. You have other people around you to bounce ideas and to help you out with things. And I got a great deal of help there. And then when I got back to Australia after, sort of 3 or 4 months or however long I was home for, then I just bullshitted my way into it. And I said, hey, I've had all this shop experience. And then, and you kind of start working in the lower end shops, the ones, where maybe the quality of work isn't so good, but you have to get a foothold somewhere. And then eventually, yeah, as my work got better and sort of progressed into more reputable kind of places. And then I started at a shop. Yeah, we moved back to Australia, worked there for a while, and then I moved home permanently back to New Zealand and went back to the Bay of Plenty. Work was pretty slow there, so I decided to shift to Auckland. And then I had a boss who was like he was a cool guy. He was like this. He's a bit of a mad dude, but he used to be in the Hells Angels, and he was like a biker type, and just pretty chaotic, but like a really big heart as well. And he showed me a lot. And then when that shop sort of closed down, I moved to another one called Two Hands Tattoo, and then that's where I think my career sort of really did the big climb, and that put me in contact with so many other artists. We had all these kind of guest artists coming through, and from all over the world. It sort of has a big reputation for that, and then made contacts, and then started traveling a lot. Yeah, and that's sort of got me out there and made a bit of a name for myself doing it. So it's been an amazing journey, that one.
That's awesome. So did you ever got in, I don't know, in a funny situation because of your tattoos, being judged or something like that?
It's rare. It's pretty rare. I think being like as heavily tattooed as I am now, it tends to make people gravitate towards me more.
Oh, really? Why is
Yeah,
that?
I'm unsure. I guess I look like a curiosity to them. So I think maybe sometimes I think my presence around people can make them nervous. So their immediate reaction is to start asking me like, oh, hey, you have a lot of, start talking to me, hey, you have a lot of tattoos. Which one hurt the most? And that's the icebreaker. And then once you start talking, most people are, oh, I'm just like a regular person. I'm not this intimidating. I think, overall, it's just, people just want to know what you're about, and then I say, oh, it's my job, and they're like, oh, that explains why. But I think another weird effect that it's had on my life is it allows me to move between many worlds. Like I sort of, have pretty vastly different friend groups, and it allows it. I don't know. not be a chameleon, but sort of, yeah, shift between worlds and sort of be accepted in many different places. Yeah. The
That's
only sort
awesome.
of adverse reactions I had is maybe in Europe, get like old ladies in the street yell at me and stuff like that. Yeah, that's about it.
It's the power of stigma, no? Because a tattoo it's always has been, connected with bad guys, bad things. The image and the stigma. This.
I think the word, I may be wrong, but the word for a tattoo in Latin, in Roman Latin, is stigma.
Oh, really? Oh, man, that's so interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, how that, because at the same time, we see, I don't know, I went to a phase, for me, tattoos was a phase in my life, and maybe, yeah, it was because it's something to tell something about us, so we put those, those stamps with lots of colors and it's sometimes it's just a little, yeah, it's a message we put out there, right? Also, man, that's
It can be. I think
that's
they
who I
can be
am.
very symbolic. For some people, they are. I mean, tā moko and various other Polynesian styles of tattooing, it's definitely symbolic. It's time, place, rites of passage, association to where you're from and who you're from. And it has the power to depict that. And in many cultures around the world, it's the same. I mean, a prime example is my friend Stu McDonald, and he's a Maori guy, and he was traveling around Europe working a lot doing tāmoko. And when he was saying when he was in the UK, people are, you're from Spain, right? Or you're from the Mediterranean somewhere, and he'd be like, oh no, I'm a Māori, I'm from New Zealand, da da da. And then, but as soon as he got his moko kanohi done, that's unmistakable where he's
That's
from.
a
It's a
statement.
powerful symbol. It's the symbolism lies there. For other people, for myself, it's time and place, and maybe the phase of my life when I look at them, I was like, oh, I was here. This is where I was at in my life. This is what maybe it was. It's an illustrative process of that, but usually not too much more. Some have a lot of meaning to me, but most it's just artistic appreciation. And yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say, I my in my personal experience when I the time I was getting more tattoos, I was feeling, yeah, I wasn't. I'm not gonna say that was the reason, but I notice now, kind of have a little bit more awareness. I was a little bit going through a rough time, and I think that for me was. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I'm not gonna say it's a type of meditation, but it's that thing you're there, super present, dealing with that pain, and that was very very powerful for me in that sense. So I kind of when I look at my tattoos, and there are no special meaning, but reminds me that phase of my life when I was going through very rough time, and I was for me was kind of therapeutic going through, especially as well because my jiu-jitsu coach Leo Bulldog, shout out to Leo Bulldog, he's in Ireland now. He's a tattoo artist, and such a good friend. So it was such a good combination of going there, talking to him, and going through that process, man, and hours there. So yeah, so I had really good memories from that phase.
I think
Because you develop very strong connections with the people, right?
often, yeah, I have a lot of clients that have become good friends. I have a lot of fellow artists that have become, good friends. It's kind of, I guess, within the Western context of tattooing, it's kind of been a place for rebels and people that are outsiders or people that are a bit left of field. So I think for maybe yourself in your youth, that was the people that you needed in that time.
Yeah.
And it's sort of you find commonality with others. And then I think as it develops, or if you develop, and for me personally, traveling more, it allows you to connect with other cultures and discover new things about people and ways of life and ways of thinking and different realities, And I think that's that's part of that draw for a lot of people, you know, people where they feel they might not fit in, and then they find this little niche in the world where they do, and they start getting tattooed a lot. It can be, you know, again, a rite of passage for them, or just somewhere where they feel they fit in. I think it provides that. I think a lot of people that work in the industry kind of forget that sometimes you get too caught up in the work, but it's kind of a really special process for a lot of people. It's a self-transformative process, or
Yeah.
it's just time to be out of a hectic life or something, even though you're getting hurt for however long. Just a break, I guess.
Yeah, I love.
Meditative, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
love
sure.
the way you put it. Yeah, that's. So, Aaron, have anything you don't like to tattoo?
I stay away from I what I don't like tattooing fascist symbols. I won't sort of I avoid anything to do with fascism. It's just, I don't know, wasted time and energy, I think. And I think a lot of the people that want that sort of stuff have sort of, you know, maybe been lost in life at some point, and maybe they don't fully understand the repercussions of what they're doing. And they might change, and they might learn, and they might be stuck with that symbol on them. So I think, yeah, I avoid that. I avoid like sort of any tattooing that relates back to, that is particularly, I don't know how to word this, particularly symbolic towards. So I won't do tamoko, for example, because that is for Māori people. Well, to be done by Māori people for Māori people and others as well, I think. But there's a certain, you know, there's certain narratives in that attach back to whakapapa. There's certain, so, you know, it's not my place to do that, and I won't bastardize it. There's a lot of people that kind of do, I feel, but maybe they just haven't learnt about it enough and they're blindly doing it. So yeah, there's all these kind of things that I sort of yeah, won't do.
That's awesome. So, Aaron, how was this? So you've been to Brazil as well. Huh? How
Yeah, two
was
times.
2 times? How was this experience?
Brazil's wild, man.
Did you already was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu back then or no?
No, I'd heard about it maybe once or twice in passing, but I didn't know anything about it in any detail. Yeah. I knew it was popular in Brazil. I remember going out when I was in Rio de Janeiro during Carnival. I went to that, and I just bumped into this like group of guys, and they all like really built, massive dudes, and they all had these like MMA and jiu-jitsu shirts on. That was probably first remembering ever encountering it or hearing about it. And they were just like, come with us, you know, hang out with us, it's all good. It's a little bit dangerous around here. So I was like, all right, a bit naive, just sort of went for the ride. And then ended up having a great time with them. And then I remember this guy running past and trying to rob one of their girlfriend's handbags, and one of them just absolutely dealing to him. And I was just like, holy shit. All right. That would be my first memory of ever encountering it or hearing about it. Yeah. Yeah. But Brazil, yeah, it's fun. It's a fun place. It's kind of a little bit dangerous, but I think that adds to the fun.
And man, you
You just
learn.
have to be street smart. That's it. You learn pretty quickly if you're not.
Yeah. And you learn the language as well, man. You speak Portuguese very well.
I speak Spanish. Yeah. I learned Spanish, or started learning Spanish in Argentina. And sort of continued just on my own part. I haven't taken any formal classes or anything, but on my own part, just trying to be active with it. And my ex-partner, she was from Colombia, so that helped, having someone in the house to just fire stuff out all the time, whether it made sense or not. And then a subsequent trip to South America, and then been to Spain a few times, so just sort of improves a bit each time.
Yeah.
Just keeping active in it. Yeah, I think it's fun. It's really fun learning another language. I'm currently studying Te Reo Māori as well. I think part of learning another language is the reality or the worldview of a different culture. When you can sort of communicate at least semi-effectively in that language, you'd understand that, right? Learning English, it's how frustrating it is at first when you don't have the vocabulary, or it's just frustrating, right? You're trying to just do day-to-day things and you can't. And then you start to like kind of get a grasp for it, and then functional use, and then maybe more abstract concepts come sort of later. But when you do, you start to get, I feel, a different version of reality sort of evolve in your mind with it. Yeah, which I think is important. Effective communication, be it in your first language or any language, right?
Yeah. And how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came to your life?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came into my life because of my work friend. So when I was 30, I had a heart surgery. I had a problem called atrial tachycardia, where basically I had a little node. You have a little node in your heart that regulates rate and rhythm. And I had another part of my heart start doing its own thing and start interfering with that signal, and it would give me, heavy heart palpitations and racing heartbeats. My resting heart rate will go up to 140.
Wow.
Yeah, and just get hot and sweaty. And I was very overweight. And then I had a lot of time in hospital to think. I had a full month in hospital to think about my life and life choices, and sort of like where my health was at. It was a pretty big shock to be 30 years old and having a heart surgery. I think it was maybe came about from, an infection, but also poor life choices as well. I was very overweight. I was maybe pushing 120 kilograms.
Wow, man.
Yeah. And I'd made a very clear, conscious decision with that kind of shock of being in hospital and not knowing what's going to happen with my life. Am I ever going to be able to do that now? Is my heart just never going to, is it permanently damaged? I found out it wasn't, and then the problem's not that bad, and it was quite easily corrected. And then within 2 days after getting out of having the surgery, within 2 days I just started. Started, pursuing being physically active again. So started Muay Thai, started doing a little bit of weights training, and then I had a work colleague, and he was just harping on about it. We shared a common we shared a room together in the tattoo studio, and he just like would not shut the fuck up about it. He'd just go on all the time. And
Who's the guy?
His name's Rob McKenzie.
Uh,
Now he is a tattoo shop in Titirangi now. So he's based in Auckland, but he just went on and on and on, and I was just like, all right, let's go. One day I was like, let's go. You take me there, so it's not so alien to me. And I started, and that sort of began the journey, into the void of jiu-jitsu. It's fun. I feel like the more I know, the less I know. And then the more I overthink things. I feel like I was kind of maybe better when in the earlier stages of it, because I'm not trying to calculate everything in my head, but it's still pretty fresh. It feels like it's, I don't know. It's fun for that reason, I feel. It's exercise and, learning murder yoga. So.
That's awesome. So, Aaron, we've been talking a little bit at the gym as well. And you mentioned about, especially because now this month, lots of people are talking about mental health and all those things. So you've been through lots, especially going through a heart surgery in such a young age. So, in which stage did you feel you need some help, and how was this process?
How far back do I go?
My friend, we have all the time in the world. So
okay, I grew up sort of pretty rough. So where I grew up, there's a lot of and I think still to this day in rural New Zealand, there's a lot of problems with alcoholism, drug use, like serious drug use, domestic violence, and just violence in general, and people's not inability to effectively communicate with one another and express themselves. Is kind of this culture in New Zealand where it's tall poppy syndrome, right? People, if you stick out or you try to do better, people knock your head off. So it kind of keeps people like a bit emotionally stunted, I feel. And I grew up like that in a house with a domestic violence and drug and alcohol problems, and we left early. And I think when, that age and these kind of things happen, it has a serious lasting effects on your psyche. Yeah, my mother and I left. We sort of bounced around homes a lot, changed schools a lot. We were very poor because, solo mum with three kids, and she was very young as well. My mum had me when she was 17, so it made life quite difficult for her. And she just, her inability, or maybe because of how young she was, just checked out with a lot with drugs and alcohol. Um, so you kind of have to grow up quick. And it sort of relates back to what I'm getting to is like you have to grow up quick. So I left home early. I stayed with like a whāngai family, so I was not a proper like fostering or adoption situation, but like with close family friends kind of thing. Went and lived with them for a while. Lived with my grandparents. Lived with other friends as well. Sort of still went to high school and these kind of things, but got out of home pretty early, and you make your way. You learn. Um, but again, I don't know. I feel like in New Zealand we're not often taught how to deal with our emotions effectively or meaningfully. We just kind of taught to ignore them and get on with it. And uh, yeah, basically a lot of it stems from that. And what would happen is a case of monkey see, monkey do. I think you see that growing up. That's your reality. That's what you know, and it made the world like quite confusing for me when I got out into the wider world. I carried a lot of anger and resentment, and how I knew how to deal with it was with violence. I was a pretty violent and angry young man. Um, Drugs and alcohol as well. Yeah, I drank a lot. Um, but mostly, yeah, just a lot of drinking and just not dealing with shit. And then I started, to see how much this was sort of affecting people around me, how unhappy I generally was. And weirdly enough, it's gonna sound strange. I took LSD and I had this kind of epiphany when I took it. Was this deeply introspective experience, and I had this kind of epiphany about why am I carrying around all this anger and the kind of the erosion of my sort of being, my soul, as it were, that the effect it was having. It was just eroding me as a person. It was eroding my ability to even like get on in life. Um, yeah, I started making small changes in, I think, consciously, but it wasn't guided by anyone. It was just, I can't keep existing like this. It's tiring. It's just tiring. And then I found tattooing probably not long after that. And that sort of gave me a path for a while. But I think, the problems were still there. The underlying problems were still there. I just started building a bit, a new identity on top of that. And a more positive one. But periodically these kind of, once I got to a certain point of like, I've got this going for me, I'll kind of just self-destruct. I'll fall back into old patterns a little bit, and not nearly as bad or sans the violence, but I'll start drinking again and kind of like self-sabotage a lot, and continue to do so for many a year. Or I'd avoid my problems by traveling or picking up some other activity, you know, make a bit of a mess, and then just like, all right, I can't deal with it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pack up and leave. Um, so it's kind of this really dysfunctional way of living, and really I built something good for myself. Why I just don't know how to enjoy it. So had the heart surgery, started training a lot, which helped my mental health greatly. Just being in like a really positive environment, a non-biased, non-judge. That's what I found that one of the biggest things about jiu-jitsu is like a meditation for me. When you walk in there, it's just like everybody's on there to learn. Nobody's there to be anything but what they are in that place,
Yeah.
So that was kind of a really new experience for me. The heart surgery as well. That was like a big shock to kind of, sort your shit out, and it's not going to deal with itself. There's not going to be someone coming to save the day for me. I've got to be that person. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue, I feel like, just destroy my life till the day I die, basically. Um, yeah, so where was I at? Heart surgery. And then it's kind of, I kind of dived into that. I used that because I stopped drinking altogether, and just really focused on being too healthy. But I feel like I used that as the new outlet instead of alcohol, just really dived into that too much and started like really obsessing over it, not having not having healthy interactions with it. Just started becoming, like really running myself ragged, training like 10 times a week more, just to kind of, like if I don't do this, I'm going to fall, being scared to fall back into old patterns again, because the problem still exists, right? I didn't deal with it.
Yeah.
Then my father got, how did I get to this point where I'm sort of, or this trip that I've sort of been on now? My father got diagnosed with stage 1 dementia, alcohol-induced dementia. So I kind of decided, like, well, he's really got no one around anymore to look after him. He sort of alienated himself a lot from people. So I'm going to kind of have to be the person. My brother has children. My sister lives in Australia. That's going to be my job. And I really started to like become hyper focused on that. I was like, I'm going to move back home and set up a business there. And really was, I think, obsessing over it in a really unhealthy way. It was like this, and it started to build this, like, I've had anxiety in the past, but not without due cause. This was like, it started really eating at me. And really just making my thought process get to the point where it's almost delusional, like this rhetoric starts in your head, and then it starts to snowball and snowball and snowball. And then this general feeling of uneasiness and, distress, constant distress. Then the lockdown happened. So this is a pretty recent thing that I've started, this kind of pursuit of really solid mental well-being, and that kind of came at a fortunate time. Weirdly, there was a lot of panic around it, and then once that actually happened, and the world stops, literally the world stops, and you have time to just be, and not worry about work, and there's nothing I can do about anything right now. I just have to be. I kind of sat with my thoughts a lot. It was nice. Yeah. It was kind of like, as mundane as some parts of it were, it was just nice to have time and sort of start to reassess things a little bit. And then, of course, when it finished, I started back at work, and it was frantic busy again, and I'm kind of getting really pulled up into that again, and the anxiety really started to come on a lot, and even stronger, to the point where I was stopping, not being able to sleep properly, and my interactions with people became very, like, for myself personally, very jarring. I started dreading going to work. I started, like, it made just normal functioning become quite extremely difficult. And then my partner, she, said to me, "Oh, have you thought about trying therapy?" And I think, again, there's this, like, in New Zealand, a big stigma around that. Like, you only go to a therapist if you're crazy or you have, serious problems. I think mental health is really underrated here. And when I did go, I contacted someone. I was recommended to go to a certain person, and when I did, it's a strange experience at first. Like, it's like me doing this. It's the same thing. This is really foreign to me. But if you don't, you try it, you find out, and it's not as intimidating once you're there. What was a little odd at first was just being in that headspace and building that relationship with the therapist, because you're not going to just trust anyone off the bat, especially with really sort of existential stuff about your being, about your person.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, settled into it a bit, and then, started discovering a lot about myself. And then once you sort of have these kind of this self discovery and see where these things sort of stem from, and um, it makes the world start to make sense again, and kind of brings you back to a healthy version of reality.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's been good.
That's so
Yeah,
awesome,
it's
man.
been
Yeah.
really good.
I admire you so much for that, and this what was one of the reasons, I asked you if you could come and share your story because, it's I see lots of people, especially at the jiu-jitsu world, as soon as they get injury physically, they straight away go to a physiotherapist. But it's
Yeah,
very
right.
rare to see someone who is going through, dealing with some anxiety, some depression, to come even so I'm coming to I'm going to see someone, and I think that's so cool to hear. You're art as a man. It's you have this look and. But man, deep inside, you just decide, no, I'm gonna do something about it,
We
and
only have our lives, right? We only
yeah.
have in our how we feel and exist, and the things we do in this world is it's all governed by this emotional kind of where we like what we're rooted from, how we've
Mm.
grown up, all these kind of things, and it can seriously affect how the rest of your existence is.
Mm.
So
And
if you don't get
already,
on them,
yeah, and already you're breaking the stereotype once more. That's super cool.
been known to break a few stereotypes in my time.
That's really cool. So, Aaron, how that's kind of in a practical way? How's the therapy has been helping you?
In a practical sense, was what I think first we just established sort of what the anxiety was stemming from, um, and 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 like things about, I think a lot of it's effective communication, being able to communicate with myself, being able to communicate with other people, what I take away from that communication, um, what are these driving kind of forces in my psyche that make me experience this kind of reality. Um, so one is, yeah, my childhood with the violence and everything, and then being forced, to just grow up too quick. So you have to go from being a child to an adult, and learning how to function as an adult in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that kind of period. So this kind of child mind state still exists in your subconscious apparently, and well, now I'm pretty sure it does
Mm-hmm.
because of the therapy. And basically, a lot of this anxiety that I'm experiencing is because that child is scared, that child is unsure, that child is still, and it manifests itself in certain ways through certain behaviors. Basically me lashing out and going and doing just self-destructive sort of things was basically that child having a tantrum
Mm-hmm.
because it hasn't been raised right, or in
Mm-hmm.
positive circumstances, and has only gone to a certain point developmentally, and then there's no kind of transition period for it to sort of be this cohesive part of my psyche. So um yeah, what what I found, I thought it was going to be a really odd experience, was my therapist told me, like, communicate with that child, learn those feelings that it's, or those experiences, and how it manifests itself, and when it does, talk to it like an adult. So I end up with this kind of, it's a monologue, it's me talking, it doesn't have any verbal response, just a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
just a feeling of, anxiety or stress, or really unsure about something or someone. um yeah, just talking it through it, like, hey, I've got this, I'm here to look after you, this is my job, raising that child basically in my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
And as time sort of gone on, it's manifesting itself less and less, and I guess the cohesion process is maybe happening, like I don't feel like certain statements that people make kind of like, really grab me and suck me in as much. I can sort of view them objectively now. And what else? Um, Sort of like, I think as well, I didn't realize it that much, but I really experienced the concept of justice and injustice in a really big way. Like, because from what I've learned is that when you kind of come up, like, from the conditions that I grew up in and all these kind of things, it's just like this, a kind of empathetic response to, I don't want to see that happen to other people, or I don't want that to happen to myself again. So I really feel like if there's even the slightest injustice, I'll get these feelings like just like blind, like rage or frustration, or just really sad about these kind of things because of that, basically. So being aware of that, and then kind of, without the anxiety around a lot of the interactions I'm having or my experience, it makes it really easy not to get so caught up into these kind of ideas of justice and injustice and really going off the rails with them, not using them constructively. I wouldn't. They'll just, in my mind, they'll just snowball. So worst possible outcomes and really overanalyze things. What other tools? I mean, reading a lot about negotiating and effective communications, how to sort of enter a situation with anyone and just making them feel heard. No, you don't necessarily have to agree, just effective ways to sort of, make people feel heard, even if they're right or wrong. How to sort of have those sort of harder conversations and not sound accusatory in them. For example, an argument with your partner, and you say, like, why did you do that? Or it just triggers an irrational response, using the right language to sort of get the best result for everyone, right? Rather than walking away feeling frustrated and angry and not gaining anything from it, but being pissed off, and getting to the source of the problem, and then being able to, just better communication skills. So sort of been learning a lot about this at therapy, and then how to not just be in survival mode all the time.
It's tiring, huh?
It's tiring. So, trying to enjoy a bit what I've made, being fortunate enough to make for myself. So, it makes me wonder why. No, I lost that train of thought.
See it, man.
No, I've lost it completely. No, I drifted right off that one.
But Aaron, super cool, man, because your story, it's like lots of other stories. I can relate to so much, man. It's super
common. And I think a lot of people, we live in this really individualistic kind of culture, especially now at this time. I think it's driven a lot by social media, and people are feeling more and more isolated. I think we've lost connectivity with other people a lot.
Yeah.
We've lost that kind of, that rhizomatic effect that society is meant to have, that sense of community. So people are definitely, I think, now feeling more isolated, and anxiety levels are, amongst the younger sort of generations are higher than they've ever been.
Yeah.
Mental health probably the worst it's ever been. I think, it's a funny one, and being sort of like on the tail edge of that generation, or the leading edge of that generation of, kind of the internet age, is sort of lucky to grow up with community, but then be able to see that point of view as well. I don't know what can be done about it, though, to be honest. I'm trying to work it out in my mind, how I can figure out a way to try and get people help, but I think New Zealand is really sort of, there's not enough therapists, there's not enough time and resources, there's not, and the governments, no matter who they are, I don't think they put effective money into it, because it does take time, and it's expensive, and it takes a lot of time. And I think they just try to have sort of quick bandage solutions for the mental health issues that are, been around for a long time and worsening. Do you have any ideas on how to? I'm looking myself. I don't know. Maybe a pay it forward system or something for people. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out to get people, because it's helped me so much. So
But Aaron, I think that the most important thing it's what we are doing right now. We are talking about it. We are sharing, a personal story. I'm pretty sure, not only myself, but lots of people who are listening, who are watching, is gonna be able to relate to that.
I
And I
hope
think
so.
that's the beginning. And especially again, someone who it has this visual thing. What people are gonna say, I know you're super tough, just what's what they said. Take a concrete pill or something like that. It's the toughen up, those type of things. But see someone like yourself, who made it a conscious decision of looking for help and be open about it. That's for sure. It's the beginning of the process. The revolution of the change. We wish to see out there.
Yeah, I think the what I'm encountering now with like my friends, I've sort of encouraged a few people to do it. That have we've grown up together or
Yeah.
in quite similar circumstances, and if not, they've grown up even like really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Is just the lack of resources, and a lot of people don't have the time nor money, like
Yeah.
raising families and this kind of thing. So it just passes down. It's that intergenerational kind of shift of it.
Yeah.
So
And also the information, to put the information out there. One thing makes me angry, and I hear, ignorance is a bliss. No. Ignorance, it's very bad. We need to put the information out there. We need to talk more about it. We need to give tools to people, to help. And for all the things you said that, so, of course, be conscious about your bad habits was one thing, right? When you realize drugs and alcohol was just making everything worse. Look after your health, and by look after what you drink, what you eat, going to do some exercise, find something you can do with other people, like Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. Also seek for help, a professional help.
yeah,
Go to
because
talk to someone.
there was a lot that I already understood. There's a good podcast actually from a guy. It's called the Blind Boy Podcast, and he talks a lot about mental health. And this sort of really started to open my eyes to a lot of my own kind of patterns of behaviors,
Yeah.
like in
What's the name of the podcast?
the Blind Boy Podcast.
Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah,
check it out.
it's a good one. He talks about like simple sort of things like cognitive behavioral, like simple actions that you can kind of take, and yeah, that sort of opened my eyes a lot to it. And then some of what he was talking about was, yeah, just things that kind of resonated with myself a bit, like, oh, maybe I should look into this, because if I don't, then, well, I'm accountable for me, and then if I'm not good, then the people around me aren't good, and it's only gonna carry on.
The ripple effect. How about the rise of the Super Bean podcast?
I've just started listening.
Ah,
I wasn't
cool.
even I wasn't aware beforehand.
Oh, really?
So yeah,
Oh,
I know,
man.
right?
Yeah.
Going on it now.
Man, this is the only thing we talk on this podcast, from the number one to now, that's the biggest topic, and the biggest topic.
Oh,
And
really?
we call emotional fitness. So all the episodes has something, yes, some tool to help us to navigate to this chaos, right?
Yeah, this been a good book that I've just read, and it's for helping. It's helped me with trying to communicate effectively with my clients, with colleagues, with my partner, and it's called Never Split the Difference.
Ah, yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
FBI negotiator. There's
His name is Chris
Voss.
Voss. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
this book. Yeah,
So I've been reading that, and yeah,
he's great. He's awesome. Yeah.
it's like I think using kind of approaching things from a empathetic sense, and from sort of it allows to sort of learn more from a conflict rather than just walk away feeling frustrated, and so that's sort of been a good one that I've been reading, that I've been putting into practice a lot, and it's starting to really
That's awesome.
become a normal part of my sort of vocabulary and how I operate. I'd recommend it.
Reading it's a very powerful tool. I think people sometimes underestimate how $20 book can change your life
Totally
completely. You know, it's such a powerful tool. Reading, you know, books and podcasts as well. I think podcasts now it's a such a pure way to get the information. You know, without any layers. It's a great tool.
Yeah, for me, I find podcasts easier because I like to listen to stories. I like to hear stories from other people.
Yeah, me
I like
too.
that kind of, even that culture of when you go to the pub for a beer and someone's telling a story. I enjoy that. Just
Yeah.
I think it's a sort of innate part of the human being, no matter where you're from or what culture you're from. It's So I find it's a really good format for me to learn through.
That's awesome. So, Aaron, now we have this section of the podcast. The name is "Embrace the Chaos." So, I'm gonna make some hard questions to you. Okay?
All right.
Are you ready? I hope so. Eh?
I hope so.
So, Aaron, do you cry?
Yes.
Yes. When was the last time did you cry?
I think I had a happy cry about a month ago.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell about it.
It was just like I literally just finished a therapy session and I had this kind of it was a big one like I just had this kind of really quick shift in afterwards, and it felt like like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. No, maybe a bit longer than a month ago.
Oh
Maybe
man,
2
what
or 3.
amazing! That's super cool.
Yeah, I just like felt
Ah.
happy. I was just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I see that for what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that'll probably be the last time.
That's awesome. So, Aaron, what's life is about it?
Pardon me?
What's life? What's life? What's life is about it?
I don't know. You tell me. I don't think anyone knows.
Do you have any idea? What's your reflection about that?
It's none. Nothing. I don't think anyone will ever know. Life's for living. That's it. That's it. Try and make good of it, I suppose. Try and be happy. That'll be it.
Yeah.
Try to experience these little moments of joy here and there when they come up, and really appreciate them when they happen. That's it.
Do you have any rituals?
I have a few. Yeah, I keep quite regimented with sort of, they come and go. They do come and go. But like, with my exercise, for example, now I'm staying really kind of regimented with it. So I'll get up, I do certain things at a certain time and then structure my day around that rather than. So that becomes quite ritualistic for me. Yeah. And I read, I guess, what's another one? I read a lot about history. I'm always diving into some kind of history thing. It becomes quite a habit for me. I don't know if it's a ritual as much, but
yeah, that's cool. So, Aaron, if you could go back in time and have a talk with the 21 version of yourself, and you have 6 minutes to talk to, it's kind of the same time as a row we do at the gym. So 6 minutes. What do you say to yourself?
tell him I love him, and that he needs to learn how to love himself. Yeah, I think that'll be it.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah, I think that's all. Love is key, right?
That's super cool. So, Aaron, and for people who it's dealing with lots of things at the moment with this time and place we are. So, what's your advice to them?
Don't be scared to ask for help. You're not alone in the world. There's, even if we have as people have minor disagreements or major ones, we're still people. We still have the same needs. Yeah. The trying to have a positive effect in your own life is like it's like the negative. It's, if you start, the ball starts rolling and it eventually gets big, and the positivity builds, the energy spreads, the self-discovery continues, it snowballs just like the negativity does. So don't be scared to, like, if you need help, if that's what it takes to get you going, then do it. Yeah, it's not that scary once you start. Yeah.
That's awesome. And we don't need to know all the answers, right? This is what we celebrate on this podcast. We celebrate the questions. We don't, that's we celebrate. We don't know things. That's what we celebrate. So, Aaron, what's the question I should ask you and I didn't? I miss it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well covered, man. Yeah.
There anything I should ask you and I miss it?
No, I think you. I don't. I'm not sure. To
Uh,
be honest. What's the meaning of life or something? I don't know.
Yeah, cool,
I know
man.
you already kind of asked me that one.
Yeah,
I don't know that, so I couldn't tell you.
So, Aaron, if someone wants to have your art on their body, have a session with you, where can they find you?
I live in Wellington, New Zealand, and I'm at Union Tattoo on Willis Street, corner of Willis and Abel Smith. So yeah, you can find me there or email me, Luckman, Luckman, tattoos@gmail.com.
Yeah. You're on social media.
Yeah, Instagram. My handle is at Luckman_tattoos. Yeah. And I'm usually as soon as you type in Luckman, it's usually the top of the list, so it's pretty easy to find.
Yeah. So, my brother, thank you so much. Thank you for being vulnerable here. Thank you for sharing your story, my friend. I think that was a awesome episode of the podcast, and I'm pretty sure this is gonna affect in a very positive way lots of people out there. So, thank you so much for being brave and coming here and share your story with us. And
Yeah, not a problem. I hope. I mean, I don't think it's much of an inspirational story, but if it's what someone needs to get them over the line, then yeah, I hope it can help.
yes, man, I'm pretty sure will. And I see you on the mats, right?
See you then.
Yeah. Thank you, my brother. Thank you so much.